If you've ever thought, why am I not happier when my life is good? This episode is for you. What if the goal isn't happiness, but simple wholeness? Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome back to soulSHINE. Today's episode is going to be deep and honest and maybe uncomfortable because we're not going to rush to fix anything or bypass discomfort in the name of positivity. And I know that by the end, you will feel relief. You will feel lighter. You will feel less burdened and like more is possible. Here's how we're going to break this down. First, why chasing happiness quietly shrinks your life. Second, how burnout becomes misunderstood when we treat it like one single thing instead of a message. And third, the last thing is a simple practice to help you choose wholeness in real time without forcing yourself to feel better. Ironically, what I want to sit with today is subtly woven into all of our social and cultural messaging, and yet we never stop to question. And that is the low-grade pressure to be happy, not at peace, not existing with substance and meaning, like sugar rush happy, the feeling that you should just be happier than you are. And when we're not happy all the time, we feel dissatisfied, a sense that something is missing, even when life looks good. So even when you're functioning, achieving, showing up, that question, why am I not happier, keeps showing up? Because somewhere along the way, many of us absorb the belief that happiness is the goal. It's the metric, as if it's proof that we're doing life correctly. That if we're doing life correctly, that we should feel good, calm, fulfilled, grateful, at peace. And so we learn slowly and unconsciously to edit ourselves. We celebrate the parts of us that are productive, inspiring, resilient, lighthearted in what we say and how we present ourselves and what we post. And we quietly exile the rest, the sadness, the frustration, the grief, the resentment, the seasons where energy disappears, the moments we feel small or lost or unsure. We don't just dislike those parts. We judge them. We treat them as problems to solve, flaws to eliminate, evidence that we're failing. And over time, something shrinks. Not all at once, not dramatically, but subtly. What shrinks? Our range, our vitality, our intimacy with life itself. So here's the unnamed pain that I'm going to name for us. Many of us aren't burned out because life is too much. We're burned out because we're trying to live half a life. So if you've listened to this space before, you know that I love this image that I keep coming back to often. And I give credit to my original mentor, Brooke Castillo. She imagines life as a circle. So if you're not watching, you're just listening, that's okay. Just in your mind's eye, picture a circle. And imagine now that the full spectrum of your human experience is in that circle. Your whole life is in that circle. And oftentimes when I do this exercise with my students, I ask them how much of that circle should be like good and bad, pain and joy. And the majority of people say it should be 80-20, 70-30, meaning most of it should be good and light and comfortable, and the rest shouldn't be. And I think that's so interesting. Why? Why do we automatically assign that way? Why do we value joy and comfort more? And so the question to play with is imagine that circle is exactly 50-50. 50% joy, 50% pain. 50% light, 50% shadow, 50% expansion, 50% contraction. And yet we've decided ahead of time that discomfort is unacceptable. The grief, the frustration, the envy, the doubt, the fatigue, the longing, we judge it, we manage it. We try to heal it as quickly as possible to get rid of it, to push away the parts of ourselves that feel heavy, messy, resentful, tired, ashamed, unmotivated, or small. We push away the relationship that triggers us, the moments that crack our self-image, and many other things. And in doing so, we don't just shrink the painful half of the circle. Imagine you have to shrink the entire circle in order to shrink one half of it. And so we shrink our whole human experience of being human in order to shrink the uncomfortable part. So with that, we shrink the part that we want to touch, our courage, our creativity, our depth, our capacity to feel alive, and our life becomes smaller. That is the hidden cost of chasing happiness as a singular goal. It limits who we're allowed to become, what we're allowed to experience. Not only that, it creates a painful tension on the inside because on the one hand, there's a part of us that does want harmony and peace and ease and happiness. And on the other hand, there's a part of us that knows that growth and impact and truth all require friction and discomfort. But instead of letting those two parts coexist, we make them enemies. I'm going to name some dichotomies and think about how loaded each word is, okay? Light versus shadow. Loaded. Wellness versus burnout. Loaded. Higher self versus ego. I'm sure each one of those words holds a lot for each one of us. And so we tell ourselves, I'll trust myself when I stop struggling. I'll be okay once this part of me goes away. Once I feel more confident, then I'll let myself be who I really am. And I'm not judging this as bad per se. It's a strategy to feel safe, to avoid disappointment, to protect against failure or judgment or regret. And yet notice that the discomfort never goes away. We just keep postponing life. And so then we wonder, what's wrong with me? Why can't I just be grateful for this beautiful life that I have? Why can't I just be happy? Why can't I just get over this? But what if that logic is actually hurting us? What if the problem isn't that you're failing at happiness? Let's play with a different question today. What if the goal isn't happiness, but wholeness? I want to take this framework and go deeper on a popular buzzword that I find so misunderstood: burnout. Because this word has taken a life of its own. When I first learned about burnout, it was in the context of my profession. And I remember listening to NPR one day in the car. This interview popped up with a priest, and the priest started talking about burnout. And I was shocked. What? You're a religious figure. You get burnt out? Aren't you supposed to be better adjusted than us? Aren't you supposed to be more healed than us? Maybe even smarter than us? And that really stuck with me. And then a few weeks later, I was listening to somebody else in my profession give a talk on burnout. And she also shared a moment when she was shocked. She was getting a massage, and her massage therapist was sharing with her about burnout in that career. That's a career about being relaxed, about relieving tension. How can a massage therapist be burnt out? So those two incidences really stuck with me. And I thought, okay, clearly this has nothing to do with what career you're in, and it's a universal human experience. So if that's true, then maybe it's more about how we relate to our jobs. Maybe the expectations others have of us, or the expectations we have of our own lives. And I noticed that everywhere I go, every conference, every talk, every article, conversations with colleagues, that one word, burnout, it's become its own identity. It's almost like a label we wear, a verdict we give ourselves that we think I'm burnt out, so I must have chosen the wrong career, the wrong profession, the wrong relationship. Or I'm burnt out. That means I can't even handle my life, my responsibilities. And even in conversations, think about this. You hear this all the time. I'm burnt out. How are you doing? I'm burnt out. As if that one sentence explains everything. As if it defines who we are. And we flatten something so incredibly complex into one word. We lose compassion, we lose choice. Like, what does that word even mean? If I asked 100 people what burnout means, you would get 100 different answers. For some people, it might mean exhausted. For others, it is cynical. For some, it's just I'm unmotivated. For other people, maybe it just means I'm empty. Maybe someone's using the word as a surrogate for checked out. And I don't think that human interaction with that word is accidental. In the burnout research, burnout has never been like a clean, singular thing. As much as we want to put it in a definition and in a box, the most well-known model is the Maslow Burnout Inventory, which describes burnout across the 3 dimensions. I'm sure if you know this research, you already know these. And it is emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, which some people call cynicism, and a reduced sense of personal accomplishment. But already, even within that, notice it's not just one thing. There's 3 different dimensions. And even those 3 dimensions isn't the whole story. And yet, this is where so many people just stop with the 3 dimensions. But what not enough people talk about is that the science kept evolving. Researchers started to see that people don't just fall into one burnout dimension. They arrive through different doorways, each shaped by values, context, and meaning. Maslow continued his research and later created something called latent profile analysis. And that looks more at the patterns of burnout instead of the averages of the dimensions and their scores. So what does that mean? That tells us that burnout doesn't show up the same way in everyone. It's not limited to only one dimension being out of balance, like, okay, I'm emotionally exhausted, therefore I'm burnt out. It's more nuanced than that. It's more complex than that because we are more nuanced than that. We are more complex than that. So if we go through them, one of the most common profiles is what's called overextended. This person is someone, who is emotionally exhausted, and yet they're deeply engaged. They're still very caring. They're still showing up. They actually don't hate what they're doing. They often love it. They are the ones who stay late because they're invested. They help because they care. They push because work matters to them. From the outside, they look successful, committed, even energized. And internally, that cost of overextending themselves accumulates. This is not like apathy burnout. This is devotion without the recovery. And if this is you, I want you to hear this. Your exhaustion is not a sign that you chose wrong. It's a sign that you care deeply and that your system needs restoration, not erasure. Let's go through another profile, which is the ineffective profile. This one often goes unnoticed because it doesn't always look the most obvious. So these are people who may not feel intensely exhausted, but they do feel disconnected from their sense of impact. They question their competence. They doubt their contribution. Maybe they feel like their effort doesn't matter. And this can happen to high performers, maybe to a leader who's brand new, to people in transition, or anyone whose feedback loop has broken down. And the pain here, it isn't like tiredness per se. It's just this erosion of self-trust. So if you've ever thought, I'm doing so much, but it doesn't feel like I'm doing enough, this profile might be familiar to you. And again, nothing has gone wrong. Your system may be asking for more meaning, maybe for clarity, for resonance, but not escape. And there's the disengaged profile. And this one is often misunderstood as like a lack of motivation, maybe someone who's lazy. But psychologically, disengagement is protective. It's what happens when caring feels too costly. And so the whole system pulls back. Cynicism emerges not because someone doesn't value the work, but because valuing it once hurt them. So this profile might even carry some grief. It might deserve some tenderness, not judgment. You see all these nuances? And then is the one that we always classically think about, which is the classic burnout profile. That is the one characterized by the high exhaustion and the high cynicism and the low sense of accomplishment. This is a state where the whole system has been depleted for too long and without repair. And even here, even at this end of the spectrum, burnout's not who you are. It's not an identity. It's a state of being. It's a season. It's a signal that something essential has been ignored or overridden or exceeded. But here's what's important. These profiles are not like checkboxes. They're patterns. And many of us move between them over the course of a life. Shoot, even within the same year. And that brings us back to wholeness. All of this matters because these are not moral failures. Because if we treat burnout as a single enemy to eliminate, I really think that we miss the message. If we understand burnout as a multi-dimensional conversation between our energy, our values, our environment, not a definition of who you are, then something shifts. We stop asking, how do I fix myself? And we start asking, what is the state trying to protect me from or restore in me? That question alone reduces shame. It returns our agency, and it reframes burnout not as some kind of proof of failure, but as information within a larger living system. This is why I struggle with the way burnout is talked about in the wellness spaces. Every year, the same headlines, the same speakers, the same statistics, the same alarm. Burnout hasn't decreased. We haven't moved the needle on burnout. And I really find myself wondering, is the goal really to eradicate the entire human experience? Would we ever say that about grief? Would we say, oh my goodness, the rates of grief haven't gone down. Something's wrong. No, we would say that grief exists because there was love there. So why would burnout be any different? In a world that asks for meaning, for contribution, for care and responsibility, what if the goal isn't to never touch burnout, but to move through it with awareness, with dignity, with choice? What if a season of burnout isn't collapse, but recalibration? And this is where wholeness becomes not just philosophy, but a relief. And I know this is so counterintuitive, especially if you've spent years working on yourself, healing yourself, improving yourself. And I am sure I will get slack for this episode. I am sure there will be people who will absolutely disagree with me. And that's a beautiful thing. I welcome it. What can I learn from you? Tell me more about why what I'm saying is tone deaf or radical. I would love to know. And I'm also going to stand in my stance that I believe in the whole human experience, not that something has gone wrong. And look, I'm not condoning that we should try to live in burnout, that we should aim to touch burnout once in our life. No, I'm just saying that what if burnout, just like grief, just like frustration, just like sadness, isn't the enemy of well-being. It's not the opposite of well-being, but it's part of it. Stick with me, okay? If this is triggering you, just stick with me. What if well-being is not the absence of suffering? What if it's about simply increasing our capacity to hold complexity, to hold suffering and meaning at the same time? I can tell you that when I think that, I feel immediate relief. There is nothing wrong about me, or my experience is wrong or bad, or that I have to fix. Wholeness allows for seasons, for fluctuations, for contradiction. Yeah, you can be devoted and depleted. Yes, you can be capable and unsure. Yes, I can be engaged and tired. None of these negate the others. They can coexist. And when we stop demanding that one side disappear, the whole system softens. The energy reorganizes, not because somehow life is easier, but because you're no longer at war with yourself. And there is growing body of psychological research that supports this exact idea. Of course, the articles will be in the show notes. It's called a dialectical model of well-being. And at its core, it says that psychological health doesn't come from feeling good all the time. It comes from the ability to hold opposing experiences at once: pain and meaning, effort and rest, grief and gratitude, exhaustion and purpose. Not by forcing balance, but by allowing both to exist without judgment. Our capacity to hold complexity and to experience contradiction without collapsing. That means that we don't need to avoid suffering. We can integrate it. Not because pain is good. I'm not saying that we should actively go out and have pain. I'm just saying that when the pain comes, we can find the meaning through it. This perspective challenges the old way that might say, like, well-being is kind of this formula of less pain equals more happiness. Instead, I think that this framework offers something far more humane, that suffering is not a detour from a good life. It is part of a full one. And when we stop fighting that truth, we soften. We stop turning our inner world into a battleground. I'm going to say this clearly because a lot of us need to hear it. Pain is not the opposite of wellness. It's part of it. Let us use nature, okay? Something that hopefully won't be as triggering as this conversation. Nature shows us this constantly, right? Day and night, they exist together. Neither one is good, neither one is bad. They have different purposes, and that's what makes them different and synergistic. Night restores, day energizes. We don't judge the ability to see a rainbow in the daytime as any more miraculous than the ability to see the Milky Way at night. They just serve two different purposes. They're just two opposites on a spectrum, and they can be held together harmoniously. Let's look at art. It shows us this too. Think about a portrait. A portrait captivates, not because the whole thing is filled, but because of contrast. The portrait itself, where the details and complexity lives, has a lot of interesting information. And the space around it that's empty, that's called negative space. And it guides the eye towards the focal point. It's the opposite of the complex and the detail, but that negative space allows the subject matter to breathe. The darkness doesn't destroy the beauty, it makes it more visible. It can be harmonious. And yet, with ourselves, we forget. We tell ourselves, if I was really well, I wouldn't feel this. If I were really healed, this wouldn't bother me. If I were really evolved, I wouldn't struggle with this. And that belief has a cost. The emotional cost of staying there, of demanding constant happiness, is that we begin to abandon ourselves in our most human moments. We numb, we distract, we intellectualize, we rush and fix, and we lose intimacy with our own experience. So what if instead of asking, how do I get rid of this feeling? We asked, what is this feeling trying to show me? Maybe in real life that looks like, I feel unappreciated. That becomes, of course I'm frustrated because appreciation matters to me. Maybe in real life that becomes from I feel exhausted, it becomes something meaningful is being asked of me and I need support or recalibration. Maybe in real life, I feel grief becomes love lived here. Nothing has gone wrong. We're just receiving information all the time. That is where wholeness lives, not in erasing parts of ourselves, but in listening to them and embracing them and integrating them with compassion and with curiosity. Research on psychological flexibility shows us that when we stop resisting difficult emotions and we just simply allow them to exist while we stay aligned with our values, that our suffering decreases. Isn't that ironic? Resisting suffering makes it persist. Accepting suffering diminishes it because you're processing it. So not only does suffering decrease, you're actually more resilient, more flexible, more capable of meaning making, is what the research shows. So that means, back to this radical idea, hopefully you've stayed with me this long. What if the goal isn't to eliminate burnout? What if the goal is just to relate to it differently? What if we're creating a problem that we were never supposed to have by saying that burnout is the problem? What if it's not the problem? What if it's how we relate to it as the problem, our judgment about it, that's the problem? What if it's actually for us as a signal, as a message about what you value, about your boundaries, about your life? And again, it's not about making life easier. It's about not fighting ourselves. And that's, for me, where the relief comes from. Relief doesn't come from a life without pain. It comes from a life without the inner war, the inner constant resistance against it. I want to slow down here and speak to you directly. If you are someone who feels tired of chasing happiness, if you're weary of wellness culture that treats discomfort as pathology, if you've ever wondered why all the right things still feel empty, you're not broken. You're craving wholeness. And this is where the embodied, felt experience of transformation begins. Not as a mindset, not as a mantra. When you're not fighting your inner experience, you're subtly telling your body that this present moment is safe to be, to inhabit. You meet the moment without resistance. Your nervous system softens, and we move from resistance to relationship. Wholeness doesn't mean you feel peaceful all the time. It means you trust yourself across states. It means you don't abandon yourself when things get uncomfortable. I'm having this conversation with you not because I've mastered happiness, but because I have gone through the same journey, and I still am going through the same journey as a person who has lived many seasons of deep depletion and deep meaning. And then I spent years walking alongside high-capacity humans, watching what happens when they stop treating parts of themselves as problems. In moments where all that performance can just go away, and we can see people heal because they're accepting parts of themselves. They're integrating themselves. They don't find peace by avoiding the pain. They find peace by learning how to stay present with the pain. And within this community, within soulSHINE, I see so many beautiful people practicing this already. People who are learning to tell the truth without self-abandonment. People who are allowing rest without shame. People who are redefining success to include presence, integrity, and humanity. You belong here, not because you're happy, but because you're honest. I want to pause here. We're talking about community, and if this is landing, please subscribe so that you can keep having these conversations every week and we can walk this journey together because we need you at your most whole and beautiful. Okay, so let's go one step deeper. I want to offer you one small action, just one, and just notice without changing anything where you've been demanding happiness from yourself, where you've been withholding permission until you feel better, stronger, clearer. Ask yourself this question. What would wholeness look like here? Not perfection, not positivity, presence, intimacy. Trusting that wholeness isn't going to erase the pain, but it gives it a place to land. And when pain is welcomed as a messenger rather than an enemy, it loses its power to define you. Here's how we're going to do it in 3 steps. The next time a difficult emotion arises, let's say it's sadness, frustration, grief, burnout, I want you to pause and do step 1. Name the emotion without judging it. Grief. Step 2, ask yourself, what value is this pointing me towards? And you can even ask the emotion, grief, what value are you pointing me to? Instead of labeling it as a problem or asking what's wrong with me. If you don't like that question, you can try, Grief, what are you protecting me from? Or whatever the emotion is, what are you protecting me from? And step 3, ask, what would wholeness look like right now? So to recap, name the emotion. Ask it, what are you protecting me from? Or what's your message for me? And then step 3, what would wholeness look like right now? No fixing, no reframing into positivity, just curiosity, intimacy with yourself. Let that be a compass back to yourself, trusting that alignment doesn't come from erasing discomfort, but in how you respond to it. That question alone, notice how it restores your agency because you're reorienting your action back to you. Nothing has gone wrong, just out of alignment, not broken. That shift alone removes layers of unnecessary suffering because you've stopped fighting yourself and you've started listening to yourself. And this is what I see over and over, that people don't need another strategy to feel better. You need permission to be whole. You're not behind because you feel tired. You're not failing because you're disillusioned. You're not broken because you touched pain. You are human. And wholeness includes all of you. So as we close, I'm going to leave you with this invitation. You don't have to chase happiness. And you don't have to eradicate burnout. You don't have to perfect yourself to be worthy of peace. What if your work is so much simpler and so much braver? What if the goal isn't happiness? What if the goal is to live a life wide enough, big enough to hold all of you, to welcome light and shadow, to trust pain as a messenger, to allow your full humanity to belong, because you are not broken, you are not failing, you are living, and wholeness is available to you. For our ending tradition, here are some more questions to carry with you as companions. What is my relationship to these words and ideas of happy, wellness, burnout? What do I believe about experiencing different versions of myself, seasons of myself, and the whole wide spectrum of being human? Are these expectations causing me more pain or creating more peace? What feelings have you been trying to eliminate instead of listen to? I want you to comment what's coming up for you. And the reason I want you to do this is because this is how we normalize these emotions and this experience. It does no good if I listen to this and I internalize it and everyone else still carries a stigma and I'm not part of the solution. What's the most courageous, beautiful thing in a group is that we can normalize this for each other. So I want you to comment, whether it's on this podcast episode on Spotify or YouTube, or whether you go to Instagram at soulshine_global, there will be posts all of this week to go along with this episode. Or comment on any post. It doesn't matter. The point is we are connected, but it takes both of us to stay connected. So I want you to comment what's coming up for you in the conversation. And if you want to stay connected to each other in between episodes, we can engage on the Instagram space at soulshine_global. I would love to know what's coming up for you. I would love to know how the community can support you to be your most whole, alive self. So let's keep this conversation going. Okay, I'm going to leave you beautiful souls with this, that maybe the goal was never happiness. Maybe the goal was always wholeness. To stop erasing half of yourself, to stop making enemies of your inner world, to trust that even shadows carry wisdom. You are whole, and nothing about you needs to be eliminated to be well. I'm wishing you all play, possibility, and peace. Wishing you to feel so supported in this space, and I am so honored to be a part of your soul tribe. I'm sending you love, and I will see you next week.